Hello Chickies, welcome to the Fully Booked Penguin channel. I am Hannah and today we are doing my August reading wrap up. I read 10 books this month. Here's a little pile. So I have one digital and the rest were all physical editions. Yay! Looking at my pile, I had a pretty good month. Most of it was manga and manhwa because it was my birthday month and I decided to treat myself. Okay, so over the month I read 10 books, 3,372 pages. I took 5 days on average to finish them. There were varying paces for the books. All of it was fiction. Okay, we had 6 romance, 4 manga, 4 fantasy, and 3 middle grade, and then 2 classics and historical. And then I averaged a 4.3 stars. I might do things a little bit differently today. Rather than go through my read order, or the order I read them in, I will just do manga, then manhwa, and then we might do the miscellaneous, and then we will get into my historical fictions for the month. Also, I may have spoiler sections in this, so I will have a little spoiler penguin on one side that will indicate that a spoiler is incoming. Whether it's this side or this side, probably this side. I'll have the spoiler penguin just under Unho there. So if you see the penguin on the screen, I'm talking about spoilers for that book that will be featured over this side. If that makes sense. I will also say spoiler section if I need to, okay? Right, to start off our journey, we are starting with Yona of the Dawn, volume 30. Yona is about Yona, who is a princess, but her father is betrayed and killed, and so she goes on the run with Huck, and they're tracking down these dragons, and then they continue on with these dragons that are in human form, so it's more like humans have dragonish powers, but they're called the dragons. Her kingdom was sort of in a worse state than she knew because she was rather pampered and sort of kept inside the castle, so she didn't know what was going on, and turns out her father may not have been the best ruler, and so she's going around just helping people, not necessarily to win back the crown. She's like, I just want to help my people. Now that I know something's wrong, I will help them. And there may be a little romance, sort of as a background plot. It's sort of got some serious themes. There's like the kingdoms have drug addiction and they're trying to counter that, and then there's wars and battles and, you know, intrigue happening all over the place. So yeah, it's like a historical, like bows and lances and kingdoms. So in this one they're sort of wrapping up a war with the northern country kingdoms, but a couple of the dragons have been kidnapped, as well as Yona, and meanwhile Huck is helping the Fire Nation and that to combat this force, obviously. However, there's also a culty cult man who wants to take the dragons and Yona to take their big power and use them for nefarious deeds, no doubt. I loved this one. There's a certain event that happens at the very end that we've all been waiting for. We all want it. I feel like there's a certain event in this one that I'm like, that's not going to end well. But to be fair, they do have however many more books. It's them there. From that shelf all the way. There's books behind them. Oh, the way I did here. So currently up to number 44, and this was 30. And the series is ongoing. I kind of hope it wraps up soon. I would really love for all mangas to not be left on a cliffhanger when the author ultimately passes away. And that is the fear of every long series reader. So I really love this volume. A 10 out of 10. And as for spoilers, spoiler penguin, there's a little event. Let me just put it that way, and let me find it for you. So Yona is captured and the culty man tries to capture her, kidnap her, and etc, so he can take control of the dragons again, because he wants to see them turn into their really fearsome selves. There may be a bit of a fire, but Huck arrives on scene, ready to save the day. They do defeat the bad guys by the end of this one. Huck may be a little injured, and our girl was like, let me give you water, even though she was also injured quite badly. she may have had to give him some water in the classic way of transference by lips, because there was no dipper for the water pot, you know, and so they have a little, well, it wasn't a kiss, but let me just tell you. So definitely took the opportunity. There we go. So they've had their first real kiss. There we go. But the unfortunate thing is that Culty Cult Man still alive, and it's really annoying me. Because Culty Cult Man will return and no doubt make a huge problem for my girl. And I don't want that. So that was volume 30 of Yona of the Dawn. Yay! So of course for this volume I gave it a 5 stars. It's got the moment in it. So of course it has to be a 5 star. Okay, next up we have a Skip Beat, volume 16 to 18. This series is about Kyoko, who is used for her monetary company by a childhood friend who she liked, but obviously he did not like her. And she enters the showbiz because he is a singer. So she's like, let me mosey on into the entertainment industry to defeat you and take my revenge. But in doing so, she joins the path of an actress rather than a musician, because she has no talent as a musician. And then Ren is in that company, and they start off rather antagonistic because Ren doesn't like that Kyoko is in the industry for revenge. He's like, acting is a serious business. Please don't use your own motives to drag this dream and passion of mine down, please. Anyway, so they start off a bit though, but over time, Ren starts actually helping Kyoko to blossom. But in reality, she's a natural at acting, and she uses her past experiences to really embody characters, and I love it. So it's really following her different acting jobs and then her side plot of revenge, but it's not really there after a certain point. She's like, okay, you're annoying, but a lot happens. And Kyoko is a vibrant and fun, sometimes a little goofy, but she does it in a more powerful, unannoying way, which I like. Sometimes I find manga heroines to be a little annoying, and you're like, oh, please. But in this one, I don't. Before volume 16, we had a stalking incident with Kyoko, and volume 16 deals with the aftermath of that event, and Ren finding out, and Ren finding that the childhood friend is around, and he's not really happy about that. He may get a little jealous, and then Ren starts to experience sort of things to do with his past. We haven't really got much of Ren's past, we've got hints, but now we're getting into more details. Also, Sho, who is the childhood friend, of course is making the most of the situation, because I think he's starting to actually like Kyoko and all that business. He's realizing how much she did for him and how much he actually appreciates her support. And now that she's pretty much really annoyed that he's losing to this other group, she's like, pull your head in. I'm meant to be beating you, and I can't beat you if you're failing and getting beaten up by others. She's really doing it mostly out of competitiveness, but he's starting to like her. Volume 17, we get into some really sweet moments between Ren and Kyoko, which integrate some of Ren's doubts and feelings. It's mostly him working through stuff, and Kyoko just being the lovable being that she is. It's really helping through that, despite not knowing how she's helping. But at the same time, Kyoko is starting to struggle with being typecast in roles of a villain, because she's been playing this role called Mio, and it's like really dark and murderous. And so everyone's like, we want a dark bullying character, and you're perfect for that. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be always doing a bully role. But she's been given a job to look after, what's his name? Ku, who is the original actor of the role Ren is playing in the same one as Mio. But he might have a connection to Ren. Kyoko sets off to look after or feed this bloke under the directions of President Takarada. Then we get into volume 18, which of course is still Kyoko combating this typecast. And she also sees Sho going really well in the role he's doing, and she's like, I'm stuck. I'll never reach that peak position, and she's getting a little depressed. But Ku, who is slightly bullying her, but unsuccessfully, he's trying his darndest to be an annoyance and make Kyoko cook and give up on her job, really. There is a reason why he's bullying her, trying to make her give up on this task of looking after him, but she somehow twists him through her great ways, and now he's in full support and gives her an acting job to create a character, which will hopefully help with the typecast situation. But Ren is quite shocked by the role that Ku makes Kyoko play. Let's just put it that way. They are all cuties. Even the side characters, which, you know, pop in, they're all just so much fun to follow. They each have their unique charms, and I just love the series. So I gave all volumes of Skip Beat a 5 stars. I love it. I love it, adore it. Every single moment is just a fun time. Look at the cutie. That bloke right there can die for all I care. Just putting it out there. 5 stars for Skip Beat, volumes 16, 17, and 18. Okay, next up we have Father, I Don't Want This Marriage, volume 2. So in this series we are following Juvelien, who is the daughter of a duke. However, she is possessed by a real world person, i.e. a real world person comes in to the role, but she knows the future of Juvelien, where she's accused of trying to kill the princess and sent into this dungeon area because her father gives her a knife to say, here, use this. And then the crown prince comes along and she's like, well, I'm not going to be tortured by this freak of nature, so she may exit the story there. And so, of course, the now possessed Juvelien is like, I do not want that, so I will break off my engagement and I will try and escape this father and just live nice and quiet away from death and betrayal. And she meets her father's, student, protege, and strikes up a friendship. The thing is, she wants to avoid the crown prince. And let me just say that the student may be someone, or, of a position that has a crown. And it's called Prince. But she doesn't know that. But the Duke, of course, he's like, my daughter, I adore her. So you get a sort of, you're like, oh, but if he adores her so much, why does he hand her a knife and say, hey, use this? I think we both know what he meant by that. So yeah, he's trying to find a good marriage match, but also look after his daughter. But she's showing a relation with him, and he's like, my daughter! I will murder everyone on her behalf. So really protective father. We love a good protective father. I just love a good protective father. It's just in any book where it's like the father is not overbearingly so, but just in a nice, loving way. It's like, I would die for her. I would destroy the world for her. I don't especially love it when a love interest is like, I will destroy everything for you. I'm like, dude, calm down a little. But when it's the father, I'm like, you go defeat that king. You go defeat that entire kingdom for her. So I think there's a double standard, I think, a little. But I don't know, it's something about fathers standing up for their daughters. So I'm just like, yes, go father. But Juvelien's relationship with the student, her father's student, is kind of cute, and he is also learning about the Juvelien of the current, and he's like, oh, hello, let me just hang around to keep an eye on you. So of course I give it 5 stars. I love this series. And the art is great. Oh, by the way, I haven't been saying authors and stuff. Oops. So the art is by Roald. The original story is by Hong Hee-soo, and it's adapted by Yuri. I do have all the information down here, so if you want to check that for previous books. Oops. Anyway, 5 out of 5. Alright, my next book is going to be A Stepmother's Märchen, and this is volume 5. There it is. It's actually the last volume I have. Now I have to wait for the 6th one, which will be a while, and it's sad. In this, we are following Shuri, who is married when she's very young. She is his second wife. He is quite older than her, and he pretty much is not treating her as a wife, more as a heir, so she can take over once he dies. And then once his son is of age, she'll pass the land and estate to the son. However, this is her second time through life. She did die on the day of her son's wedding the first time round, which is a bit of a mystery as to how that happened and who's behind that. But of course now we're back in time, and she's decided, because of the first time through, she wasn't super close with the kids, and so this time she's like, nah, this time, these 4 kids, I'm going to fight and do better than I did the first time around. However, she has a lot of opposition and enemies within the family. Then there's the royal family, something's going on there, and then there's also the church, which is a heretical little conniving piece of so-and-so, as is the case with many of these books. So in this one, we've gone through a time skip. They're a little older. However, Elias, who is the second eldest kid, is getting into trouble. He's believing people outside of the family because he's pretty much believing this smear campaign. He's gambling, and it's not going to be a good slot he's going into. However, Nora, who is the friend, like family friend, an ally. Nora was away for a while. He's come back, and now he can help out with this whole gambling den, which is actually run by Shuri's brother. I just love the relationship between Jeremy and Shuri and Nora. I like the twins too. They're really the main ones that I like. I do like Nora's parents as well. And there's a couple others that grow on you. But really, the main crew are her family, minus Elias, and then Nora. They're just working together to try to sort out this smear campaign against Shuri, which is all incorrect, and just, you're like, oh my gosh. The danger of one person. She's like fighting a political battle against so many parties, and she's like, no, I will stand strong. I will support my family, but I also have to, in order to protect this family, fight the multitude of political battles that are hell. But of course, you know that authors love to make it a struggle bus for our main character. A lot of mayhem, a lot of things going wrong. That is how you sometimes can make a story go. You have to have things going wrong in order to solve them. However, some of the time it feels like nothing's being solved and we're just following persecution at every single turn. And unfortunately, that is the case for Shuri. She'll have a little bit of happiness, and then just the enemy attacks at every single turn, and you're like, this must be so exhausting. This is her second time through, and I'm exhausted. I haven't had to go through everything, but I'm like, wow, this poor lass. Just for the anxiety factor of, I hate this plot of stuff against Shuri, and obviously Elias going the wrong way. I did it minus half a star. I couldn't do it. I was like, this isn't a 5-star because I am riddled with anxiety for this family. So it's a little heartbreaking at the moment, and I know things will get better. I know things will be solved. Jeremy and Nora will not let anything happen to Shuri, and Shuri's got quite a good backbone to her as well. She's strong in a sort of feminine, I lead this family kind of way, and it's kind of awesome. But at the same time, like, I'm so thankful for those two, especially. I'm like, thank goodness, right? Every time they're on screen, I'm like, my boys, please solve this situation. So that is A Stepmother's Märchen, which is written originally by Spice and Kitty, and then illustrated by Orca. Volume 5. Now we have to wait for the next volume in 27 years. It's not that long. I pre-ordered it already, so it can't be 27 years, but you get the gist. Okay, so we've gone through all my mangas and manhwas, and now we're onto our miscellaneous too, and then we're going to get into our historical fiction. First up, we'll go with Nancy Drew, The Secret of the Old Clock, and it is by Carolyn Keene, which is technically multiple people rather than one author. So this is the first book in the Nancy Drew mystery stories, so the first one ever. In this one, we're following Nancy as she ends up meeting this young girl and her aunts, like old aunts, I think it is, or maybe old great aunts or something. And Nancy is there when the ladies discover that some of their stuff has been stolen by the furniture crew that took some of their furniture, but they just snagged a few more items. And you sort of hear about how they're really struggling. They want to look after the girl and send her to a good school and etc. And this old man that has recently passed away promised them some money, but when the will came out, it went all to this one family, and everyone else who got promised this money got none. However, it's suspected that the old man did leave another will, and so Nancy is sort of going through all these steps to try and find this will. It's just a quick sort of story. There's not much mystery in this one because you know it was the furniture people that stole the stuff at these different joints, and you know that the will most probably was made and then hidden somewhere. And we suspect it was in an old clock because of the title. Anyway, so we'll go through a little journey. It's just a fun little time. I don't have much to say about it because, I mean, it's more middle grade-ish mystery. But because Nancy is such a comfort character, such a classic character, that I really enjoy going through her different mysteries. And because I also love Trixie Belden books, which is another young middle grade, like, girly sleuth books, they're right in my zone of just easy, quick, fun reads that have the twist of mystery to them. So I ended up giving Nancy Drew and The Secret of the Old Clock a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Next up, we have a buddy read I did with a friend of mine, and that is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. In this, we are following Harry Potter, who is living with his aunt and uncle after his parents mysteriously die, supposedly in a car crash, but we discover otherwise, and they pretty much abuse him. He lives under the stairs and they make him do all the chores and work, and never seen such a horrible case of child abuse, and no one bats an eye. Because you discover that his parents were wizards, and then the big wizarding bloke at the time decided, you know, where Harry belongs, with an abusive family that hates magic. There's nothing safer than a child living starved and in a confined quarters. We'll just leave him there and won't check in on him or anything. So after discovering he is a wizard too, he ends up at this school for young wizarding kids, and the adventure goes from there, because there's a big bad guy called Voldemort, and he disappeared when Harry was a baby. During the events of Harry being orphaned, Voldemort happened to disappear too. But of course, there's clues that might say he's still around. Look, I had an alright time reading this. Older readers might find the bad guy in this pretty obvious, and the red herrings annoyingly obvious. Like, they go after certain characters, you're like, obviously it's not them. But again, for younger readers, it might not be the same thing, but for someone older reading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, why are they jumping to the wrong conclusions all the time? We also have Slytherin, which is one of their 4 houses at the school. They separate them into houses because everyone loves a little bit of competitive spirit in our school. But there's the Slytherin house, who are the bad guys. What I thought it meant was that a lot of the bad eggs of the wizarding world came from Slytherin house, but instead it just seems to be that Slytherin people are just bad because Slytherin. Just put them in Slytherin. We need a bad house, and they're it. Like the Dursleys, obviously, if they were to be sorted, would go to Slytherin because they're evil, and they love bullying and overpowering people that have no way to fight back. So the amount of bullying and sort of health and safety stuff, like health and safety, not a concern of the Hogwarts house. In fact, I think if somebody came in to do an assessment, they would close down Hogwarts because it's far too dangerous to send 10 or 11-year-olds to. And my favourite characters are Neville and Hagrid. Like everyone else, I'm like, yeah. Oh, and the twins, Fred and George. Love those lads. So Neville, the twins, and then Hagrid. Whenever they come on screen, i.e. on page, I'm like, look at that. But yeah, some of the others, so annoying, but it's okay. It's a middle grade book. So I liked it, but there are a lot of things that I was just like, it doesn't appeal to me personally. So I gave Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone 3 stars. Like, I liked it, but I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing on earth. Again, I know it's for a younger audience rather than someone probably 3 times the age of the target audience, you know? Little House by Boston Bay, which is the first book in the Charlotte years, which is part of like a prequel series, which is part of the Little House universe, and it is by Melissa Wiley. And Charlotte is the daughter of Martha, who was the focus of the first section, the Martha years of this prequel series. And sort of, we're just following everyday life. It's like a historical fiction for middle graders. I know nothing of American history. Well, I know little bits and pieces, of course. But being a non-American, I don't really know or mostly care about the historical events of America. However, I assume it's a good way to show some of the history, and I found it interesting. I am disappointed that this part of the series came when we never got to see Martha and Lou, who is obviously Charlotte's parents. We never saw them get together, get married, and then I really thought the immigration from Scotland to the US, the New World, I think that would have been so interesting to dive into, but we don't get that. We go into the next lineage, and I'm like, that missed opportunity is all I'm saying. Also, there are poem and like song inserts, but I don't know these songs. So I just read them and I'm like, it doesn't really mean anything to me. And I am myself admitted not really a poem person. And thinking about it, I do have a couple of songs in my own book. Like, I don't mind if it's a storytelling, but when it's just, I'm like, but as I say, it was a fun little middle grade read, so I gave it 4 stars. The story sort of revolves around the blacksmith shop of Charlotte's father, and yeah, this oncoming, I think it's not the Civil War, the one before that. The War of Independence, I think, is what we're starting. But don't quote me on that. I didn't know I had a dimple there. What a discovery. I'm sorry, that is completely unrelated. Anyway, so 4 stars for Little House by Boston Bay. Next up we have Anne of Windy Poplars by L.M. Montgomery, and this is a historical literary fiction, and it is the 4th book in the Anne of Green Gables series. And we're following Anne as she goes away to teach at a school still on the island, but somewhere else other than Avonlea, for 3 years straight. And so the book is sectioned off into 3 parts. And really it's told through mostly letters that Anne writes to Gilbert. And Gilbert is her now fiancé, and he is studying to be a doctor. So it's her letters to him about the different characters of this town and this house called Windy Poplars. So Summerside is the town, and there's like a rich, powerful family, like it's all family. And they're all the Pringles. They're all connected to each other. And at first, they all dislike Anne. So she's struggling against that, but then she's also making friends and befriending this little girl next door who has that kindred spirit. And so it's her observances of these kindred spirits and then the not so kindred spirits and her amusing takes on each of these people. It's very much a character study. So there are some characters that you're like, oh my. But it's true to life because some people do act weird. Like they don't use their heads. So you have to admit that is a part of life, unfortunately. So yeah, it's just a little story. Some of them I did find a little boring. I wasn't super attached to some, especially probably the second half. Some of them weren't as good. First half, absolutely adored. But then there were just a couple that I was like, could have done without that one, but I didn't hate it, I just was less interested. And with a book of tales, it's expected that some of them will speak more to than others. But considering I disliked Anne of the Island, we finally have Anne back being a little whimsical. She is still an adult, but she's got some of her whimsy back and her sort of humorous takes on these different observances around the town. So I gave it a 4.5 for Anne. I just love how Anne approaches things with a bit of optimism and like a bright spark. You can sometimes go through life and just to focus on, oh, these people hate me, this place is trash, but instead she chooses to look on it humorously, and I love that about these books. At least this one, Anne of the Island again. She did not have that spark, and so I was like, oh no. But this one does have it. And I actually liked the letter format through most of it. I love a few letters in books. Poems and songs, letters, love them. So that is Anne of Windy Poplars, a 4.5 stars. Next we have Pride and Prejudice, which is a classic historical fiction, literary fiction by Jane Austen. And this book is mainly following Elizabeth Bennet, who has 4 sisters. Come on, man, I must have you dance. This book is so quotable. Mainly because I've seen the movie and the show. When I see the text, I hear their voices. Dad thinks I'm insane because he doesn't think in images and sounds. So it follows Lizzie in this house in this town. They are able to keep servants, so they're at a certain level of society, but they're certainly not high up. Also, because they're all girls, the estate will eventually be entailed to a male heir and not them. So they're not in the best position because if their father dies, they'll be up in the air. They won't have anything except for, I think, a slight like inheritance or something, but it's so very slight. However, it also follows a Mr. Darcy, who is a rich man, very rich man. And Darcy is friends with Bingley, who comes to let a house in the same neighbourhood as the Bennets. And of course, a young man of good fortune must be in want of a wife. So Lizzie's mother sets about trying to see whether her daughter, mainly Jane, the eldest, can bring Bingley to their side. Lizzie's family is not great. They are the most ridiculous family ever. Jane is okay, but even she's a bit naive. She just will wish or think the best of people despite any, all other evidence that she'll try and make it still good. But they all have their flaws. Every character has their flaws, and this is sort of a romance or societal, again, character study of all these ridiculous people. Like Jane Austen has latched onto a certain topic and made that into a character for some of them. I love Pride and Prejudice. I even read the annotated version, which comes with all these different intriguing notes about society at the time or what certain sentences mean, because in today's society we've lost what that meant to back then, and it's so intriguing. I love it so much. So I may as well bring out the Spoiler Penguin. In this, Lizzie gets proposed to by her cousin, Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a ridiculous little man. He is just so full of himself and his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and he's just an amusingly silly man. Mr. Bennet is thoroughly amused by him at all times, but he is ridiculous. But he does propose to his cousin, Elizabeth, and of course back then marrying cousins was quite the dumb thing. But Lizzie turns him down, and I didn't know before, but Lizzie's friend Charlotte Lucas, I always knew that she invited Collins over to her house for dinners and stuff, but I thought, in my naivety, that Charlotte merely did that because she's like, oh, that will be awkward for Lizzie. Let's just take him away, so it's not quite as awkward. But this girl was like, no, if Lizzie won't have him, let me just lure this man in. Charlotte did the work to try and get Mr. Collins. Wouldn't have been my pick, but at the same time I understand that women had to get married in order to have any kind of position, and Mr. Collins did have quite a good, I guess, position in society because of his patroness, and he had a home, he had the Bennet estate that he was going to inherit as well. So really, I guess he was a good choice for someone in Charlotte's position, because she was 27, I think, which is considered quite old. And, Colin was as good a choice as any for her. However, I could never have married. I'm like Lizzie, I could never marry a man I couldn't respect. And Mr. Collins, you could never respect that man. But, she maneuvers him around, makes him go on walks and gardening, and she manages it quite well. But yeah, I didn't know that she would be watch for Mr. Collins down the path, then she would be like, okay, let me go out for a walk, and oh, Mr. Collins, you're here. She really sorted that out. It was no thought to Lizzie at all. So there you have it. Charlotte was a planner. Also, I think the book just shows even more of what's going on for Darcy. You sort of get Darcy's thoughts up until just after his first proposal, and then you don't see it until the end, and that's done obviously purposefully, because if we knew what he was thinking, it would spoil some of the book and we wouldn't have that sort of, oh, what's going to happen, because you knew what was going on inside Darcy's head. But yeah, I just love Pride and Prejudice. It's my favourite classic, and therefore, of course, I gave it a 5 stars. That's my review for Pride and Prejudice. 5 stars. Okay, thank you for being with me this far. We only have one more book to go. This one will have spoilers as well, because I'm going to get into a couple of details, because I have thoughts. So what book is that? It is A Fierce Devotion by Laura France. Now, I did find out that this is a novella that is technically a companion to another full-length book that Laura wrote. So this is like the brother of the main girl in that. I never read that, but I don't think you need to read that in order to read this. It didn't give anything really away other than the sister obviously got with the bloke and had kids. So it's spoiler in that sense, but it's a romance, so of course they're going to get together and have kids. So this is a Christian historical fiction. And it is set not in the War of Independence. Before that, it's sort of the French-English War. So the French were in Canada and the English decided they wanted Canada too, I assume. And there was a war. Again, not American. Don't know American history. No little bits and pieces. We didn't learn American history in school. We learned Australian history. So it's probably more Australian and English history than American history. French, English, America is at the end of that sort of war. We are following Brielle, who comes from a French family, or like a French and then Canadian family. However, her parents have died and she's been put into servitude of this tavern owner. And at this tavern, there's also a little 8-year-old boy. And they're both in servitude. The little boy has a sister as well. They're a bit beaten and bruised, and they work hard for their servitude. Obviously, she has, I think, 1 or 2 years left, and the little boy has much longer than that. And I'm like, wow. He has way more years of literally being beaten around the head. So, yeah, they're not in the best position. But there's also a lot of Indian attacks going on due to the fallout of the war. Then we're also following he has B-L-E-U, but he is travelling to visit his sister, and he comes across the tavern. And a romance ensues, but not really. Okay, I don't know how to tell this story. I will say the back of the book mentions a trip together, as in overseas trip. And you don't get to this overseas trip until after halfway. And it doesn't go into details of this sea journey. It's sort of like, we hopped on a ship, we had a tough time, we arrived. There's no real journey. So I feel that's a slightly misleading blurb, to be honest. Now, I admit I really liked the beginning. It was full of action, stuff was happening. It was a very Insta-like, like Insta attraction. I could see myself marrying this girl / I could see myself marrying this guy situation. It says it's a slow burn. I'm like, there's nothing slow burn about it. They don't get together until later, but they're instantly, there's this attraction and relationship, even if it's not official till much, much later. So there was no slow burn and there was no real ship's journey. I like a slow burn and I like a ship's journey, and so there was none of that. Also, this book was very much a love letter from Laura France to France. They go to France, and so there's a lot of random places in France, which means nothing to someone who has never been to France and doesn't wish to go to France. It's sort of it's written in English, but there's just random French words thrown in to make it French. So I didn't know that either. That was very much a French love letter. Also, there's a mistake in it, and the mistake happens to be French. It's a French language mistake, and I picked up on it. I learnt very little French, like a few words of French, and that's all I know about French. Alright, let me tell you. Nor did Brielle say adieu or au revoir. The latter in French meant goodbye forever. That is incorrect. Latter means au revoir, and au revoir does not mean goodbye forever. Adieu means goodbye forever, while au revoir literally means goodbye until we meet again, until I see you again, whereas adieu is more a permanent basis. I think the other moments she uses these words, they're fine. I think they're in context with the correct meaning, but in this case she uses the word latter, which ultimately means she was gesturing to the wrong one, which I found interesting. I just wanted to flex my French knowledge, of which I know one word, au revoir. And I'm probably saying that wrong too, so don't quote me. Now we get to spoilers. Spoilers. Blair is our main character, and Blair gets attracted to Brielle very early on. But Brielle is the granddaughter of I keep saying the wrong thing.
Marquis.
A Marquess. Anyway, but she's never been in contact with this Marquess because her mother married for love and the grandpa didn't like that at the time. That's like the initial thing. But he takes her from her servitude as well as the little boy, and they go off to Blair's family. And at that family, Brielle starts working amongst the settlement, and as does Blair, and Blair actually has a place there as well, and sort of he's interested in her, she's definitely interested in him, and he starts to talk about how wouldn't it be nice if we put this thing here? So he starts using we about the house, and so she is like, oh, I would love that. I love this place. It's like I can see myself building a family here. And so they're kind of tiptoeing around that they're going to be together and married. However, for whatever reason, Blair decides that Brielle should meet her French family because she actually has, peerage. She has this lineage of a rich fancy pansies. And so he's like, you should meet this family. And she's like, yeah, okay, I agree that I would like to see my grandfather and meet them. But also, like, this is my home. So I'll go meet them, but I really love this place. Meanwhile, he's thinking, okay, I really need to pull back because, like, she doesn't belong here. She doesn't belong here. She belongs with this fancy pants family. Nowhere did she say she wanted to be with the fancy pants family. Anyway, so they travel across the ocean with this other lady, for propriety reasons, and because the other lady had a French family as well. So they go, they visit the grandpa. The grandpa at first is like in shock because he just found out that his daughter is dead and his granddaughter is here, and so he's a bit distraught and sends them away pretty much immediately. And so then he's like, oh, okay, well, since your family rejected you, well, we do have a future. Let's talk about the future together and going home. But then the grandfather sends a message saying, I would love for you to come stay. And so he's like, oh, tamper it down, but she's going to be accepted now. So they go there, and this girl, she's enjoying the gardens. She loves walking, so she's enjoying the gardens, but she's getting pampered and lots of rich stuff going on. And of course, she's still looking out for Blair because she's in love with him. And he's like, in his own mind, he's like, she belongs here. She wants to stay here. She should stay here forever. And if she doesn't want to stay here forever, instead go with me, then she's just feeling obligated to. So in other words, the whole time, he never asks her what she wants. He just assumes what she wants and dismisses any clue. Short of proposing herself, this girl has done everything. She alludes to them being together, encourages his affections and pretty much pronounces her love at every corner, and yet he's still like, no, she doesn't like me. I've got to let go of this attachment. She belongs here with her rich family, even though she keeps telling me that she is not super in love with all the rich stuff. It can't wait to be home to her own river. And you find out also that the grandfather has been telling Blair that he wants to go to the New World, i.e. America. He's like, oh, I've always wanted to go there. If that's not a blaring message saying Grandpa wants to come along, we could both go. All of us could go to America together. She would have her family. She would also have me. She would also be home where she actually wants to be. But no, this man is so... He has to be covering his own eyes in order to not notice her feelings. And then he decides he's going to leave by leaving a letter. He's like, I can't face her, so I'm just going to leave this cowardly letter and go on my boat away without telling her that I'm leaving. And of course, she finds the letter and rushes after him and makes it to the dock as the ship is sailing away, and she's distraught. She's calling out his name, and luckily the woman that's travelling back with the is like, hey, isn't that your girl? Pretty much. And he's like, oh my gosh, she looks heartbroken. She looks distraught. Well, what do you expect? And so he jumps overboard and goes to her. And then they decide they will go to America together. With the grandpa. 80% of the tension going through this entire novella was just him assuming things and being an idiot. That's all the carrying drama was. The first 20% was very cool. You had a lot of going on. You had the Indian attacks. You had, so much. And then the rest of the 80% is just him being a complete bullhead. Like, the writing was fun, I suppose, except for a couple of mistakes. And, you know, I liked Brielle, and I liked the kid, and I liked his family. And I liked even Grandpa. Grandpa was great. The only person that I hated and who was pretty much the driving force behind this entire book was Fleur, and it's just... So even when they got together in the end, which was very rushed, I was like, I despise male main characters like that. And I told Mum, like, it was early on in the book, I made a different plot line. Mine was slightly different. I said that this other girl who had been interested in Fleur, and then of course Brielle came along, I thought she'd jealously write to Brielle's family saying, hey, we found your granddaughter. And then the grandpa would send a letter back saying, hey, come to France. And that's where that conflict would originate from, right? Because then Fleur would be like, oh, well, her family really wants her, and I can't live up to this big rich scheme. But it didn't. He made the decision that she should go to her family. He made the decision that he wanted to be with her family. And he made the decision that she didn't like him. I'm like, this other woman did nothing. Anyway, I've been talking for 22 minutes now about this book. So I kindly gave this book a 3 stars. Again, the writing was fun. I liked reading through it, but you can enjoy the writing and like sort of that, but hate a character so badly. And of course if the character makes dumb decisions and then the payout at the end, like, he didn't apologize, he just was like, oh, we can be together now. No acknowledgement to his dismissive, assuming behavior all through the book. And it's meant to be a Christian book, but I wouldn't, like, they mention God a couple of times, but through this process, really no real prayer going on by Blair. Because he's not saying, listen, show me if I'm meant to leave, show me what I'm meant to do, should I be with her or not. He's just assuming everything. There's no consultation with the Lord at all. So I don't think it had many Christian themes to it at all either. I'm not giving up on Laura France as a writer. I'll read more of her books. It annoyed me so much. And I hear Blur is really on theme for her male characters, whereas Brielle, who I loved and adored, I really liked her, is slightly different from what she usually writes. So yeah, we'll see where that continue. Sorry for the rant, but the thing is, ranting is amusing to me as just liking the book. You tend to get more fire out of annoyances than loves, but I love and adore some books. Rants have their own enjoyment, so I suppose it gave me that. So 3 stars for A Fierce Devotion by Laura France. And that brings us to the end of this August wrap-up. Again, mostly good reads, and then just the one annoyance. Really, it's just the one big annoyance. I admit, if any of these books happen to be your favourites, or if you have your own thoughts on any of these books, let me know down below in the comments section. And yeah, I shall see you all next time. We have a new, fresh lot of books, a fresh new month. And I shall see you all in the next video. So until then, peace!
T26